Welcome to WSHS Virtual Algebra 1 Virtual Tutor. Today we are going to talk about solving equations. So, the steps to solve an equation are, you first want to clear the fraction. How do we clear the fraction? By multiplying the top and the bottom by the denominator. Step 2 is to use the distributive property. To remove parentheses on each side. Step 3 is to combine like terms. Step 4 is you want to undo the addition and subtraction. And step 5 is to undo the multiplication or division. And most of the time for step 5, we're undoing the division. Remember, what you do to one side, you must do to your other side of your equal sign. So if you look at example 1, if we follow these steps, the first thing to do is to clear the fraction. Well, as you can see, we don't have a fraction, so we get to skip step 1. Step 2 then is to use the distributive property. So we're going to take this 8. 8 is right next to the parentheses, so we're going to distribute that 8 to the 1 and the 5n. So when we do that, we get n plus 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 5n will give me positive 40n equals 336. Now we go to step 3, which is combine like terms. So when you combine like terms on the same side, you are just adding or subtracting them together depending on their sides. You're not moving things through the equal sign here. So we are going to combine the n and the 40n. Remember, this has a coefficient of 1 in front of it. So 1n plus 40n gives me 41n plus 8 equals 336. Now from here, you're going to subtract 8 from both sides. So you want to undo the addition. So subtract 8, and we get 41n equals 328. So we undid the addition by subtracting, and now we need to undo the multiplication of 41 and n by dividing. So we're going to divide both sides by 41, and when we do that, we isolate our variable, which is n, and we get n equals 8. So that's your final answer. Again, every time you do solving an equation, you just walk yourself through those steps. Example 2, it says solve for the variable when only one's on one side. So this time, step 1, clear the fraction. Do I have a fraction? Yeah, my fraction is x minus 4 divided by 3. So we need to undo this by multiplying both sides by 3. When you multiply 3 times negative 5, you get negative 15 equals, the denominator and the multiplication of 3 cancel, which is the whole reason why we want to multiply by the denominator. So then we just get x minus 4. Again, I like to box the variable I'm solving for so I don't move it. So if I have negative 15 equals x minus 4, I now have to undo the subtraction of the minus 4 by doing the opposite by adding 4 to both sides. And when I add 4, I get negative 11 equals x. The symmetric property allows me to say x equals negative 11 as my final answer. Now for the you try. When we look at this particular problem, we see that there's no fraction, so we can skip step 1. And step 2 is to use the distributive property. So if I break up my equal sign with my line, negative 28, I don't do anything there, equals, I have to distribute the 6 to the n and the 3, and then you have to distribute the negative 4 to the 8n and the 5. So 6 times n is 6n plus 18 minus 32n minus 20. Now that we have our distributive property done, next step is to combine like terms on the same side. So I asked myself, 6n, what does 6n combine with? It combines with negative 32n. Together, when I subtract 6 minus 32, I end up getting negative 26n. Then I have to still look at my right side here, and 18 goes with negative 20. So when I combine 18 and negative 20, I end up getting minus 2. And this is still equal to negative 28 on the left. Now I have to undo addition or subtraction. So I look at the side with my variable and I say, what do I have to move? I first have to undo the subtraction. I undo subtraction by adding. So I add 2 to both sides. So I get negative 26. Negative 2 plus 2 makes 0 equals negative 26n. Just carry that down. And I'm still trying to isolate the n. And I asked myself what operation's occurring? Negative 26 times n, so multiplication. How do I undo multiplication? I divide, so you have to divide both sides by negative 26. And when I divide both sides by negative 26, negative 26 divided by negative 26 is positive 1 equals, and again that cancels and we're left with just a 1. So n equals 1, or 1 equals n. Example 2 problems deal with solving variables when we have variables on both sides. The steps are very similar, but they're slightly different. So step 1 is still to clear the fraction first. So if I look at letter A, I do not have a fraction, so I do not have to do step 1. Step 2 says use the distributive property to remove the parentheses. I have parentheses, so that means I have some distributing to do. You want to do the distributive property on both sides. So we have to first distribute 8 to the x and the 1. So that gives us 8x plus 8 equals negative 4x. And now we have to distribute that plus 5 to the x and the negative 4. So we get 5x minus 20. Step 3, combine like terms. I look on the left side and I ask myself, can I combine 8x and 8? No, they're not like. They both need to have the variable x or just be numbers in order for me to combine them. So now I look to my right and I say, all right, on the right side, negative 4x, that can go with positive 5x. Together, when I add those, you get 1x minus 20. 20 has no one to combine with. 8x plus 8 stays the same on the left. Now, this is where it kind of changes. Step 4, you want to move all variables to the left side by adding or subtracting. So, I look at my variable on the right, 1x. I move 1x to the other side by subtracting 1x. When I do so, 8x minus 1x gives me 7x. Carry down the plus 8 equals 1x minus 1x gives you 0, so it goes away. Negative 20. Now from here, it says step 5, move all the numbers to the left side. So I look at my number on the right, left, and I want to subtract 8 from both sides. 7x equals negative 28. Now that I have one term on the left and one term on the right, I can divide each side by 7 to get x equals -4. So basically, in theory, what you're doing is you're clearing the fraction, using the distributive property, combining like terms, letters on the left, numbers on the right, and then we divide. So let's think about those same steps for letter B. Clear the fraction. I have no fractions, so I don't have to clear it. -3, distributive property. Yes, I have to distribute -3 to -2 and -6. So be very, very careful with your negatives here. -3 times -2 is +6. -3 times -x is +3x. And then on the left, we have 6 minus 5x. If I look on the left, can I combine these two terms? No. If I look on my right side, I can't combine 6 and 3x either. So I don't have to combine like terms. Now, we want to get the letter on the left. So I look at the letter on the right, which is 3x, and I do the opposite of the operation that's occurring. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides, and I get 6 minus 8x equals 6. Then, numbers on the right. So I'm going to move my 6, so minus 6 to both sides, -8x equals 6 minus 6 is 0. So we get -8x equals 0. It's okay that it's 0 on the right side. And then last but not least, we divide by the number in front of the variable. -8 divide by -8, and we get x equals 0 as our solution. For the you try, again, we ask ourselves, do we have a fraction? No, so we don't have to clear it. Next step, distributive property. I have to distribute this 8 to the 8x and the 7. So I get 64x plus 56 equals -1 plus 7x. Next is combine like terms. I can't combine the two on the left. I also can't combine the two on the right. Now we do letters left, so do the opposite. So we have positive 7x, so we do minus 7x to both sides. When we complete that, we end up getting 57x plus 56 equals -1. Now, numbers on the right. So we have to subtract 56. Opposite sign, it was addition, so we subtract it. 57x equals -57. And now we divide each side by 57, the number in front of x. And when we do that, we end up getting x equals -1 as our final answer. So to recap for additional notes, your steps to solve an equation. Clear the fraction. And this is the steps you can follow for any type of equation. Clear the fraction, distributive property, Step 3 would be combine like terms. On the same side, okay? So I'm going to write that in parentheses, same side. Step 4 would be we want the letters on the left. And we do this by either addition or subtraction. Okay, letters left. They both start with L. Step 5, numbers on the right. And again, we move the numbers by either adding or subtracting. And then step 6 would be divide by the number in front of x, or whatever your variable might be. So that's to recap your steps to solve an equation. And like I said, you can use these steps to help you through the problems. So now let's take a look at some of the practice problems. These ones, some are a little bit easier. Number 1, we have 10 equals negative 3a plus 1a. I'm drawing a line down my equal sign to help me see the left from right side. Okay, this is my left side, this is my right side. Clear the fraction. I have no fraction to clear. Distributive property. I don't have to use that because I don't have parentheses either. Combining like terms. So I ask myself, on the left, do I have something to combine? No, it's just going to say 10 equals, but on the right, I do have something to combine. We have negative 3a plus 1a. Together, they make negative 2a. And now that we're here, if you have it down to one term and one term, next step is to divide. How do you get rid of the negative 2 in front of a? We divide by negative 2 on both sides, and we get negative 5 equals a. And then we can say a equals negative 5 because we like the variable on the left side. Step 2, same idea. Draw our line down our equal sign. We have the left and we have the right. We don't have a fraction, we don't have parentheses, so now we're on to combining like terms. Negative 15 equals. 4v has no one to combine with, but 8 and 5 together make 13. Now, we're going to keep that 4v where it is because it has no one to combine with on the left, and we're going to move this negative 13 to the other side. And we end up getting negative 28 equals 4v. And to get v all by itself, we divide both sides by 4. And we get negative 7 equals v. And then the symmetric property allows us to say v equals negative 7. So those ones are fairly easy. Now if we look at example 3, this is where it gets a little bit harder. Draw a line down our equal sign. We have the left and we have the right. No fractions, but I do have parentheses, so I have to use the distributive property. So we're going to take this plus 3, what's right on the outside of the parentheses, and distribute it to the 8 and the negative n. So carry down the negative 7. 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times negative n is negative 3n. Equals. We're going to take this negative sign. This is like a negative 1, and you're going to distribute negative 1 to the inside of the parentheses. Be very careful with your signs. Negative 1 times negative 7 is positive 7. Negative 1 times negative 2n is positive 2n. Now that we're here, we're going to ask ourselves on the left, what terms can I combine? On the left side, we can combine negative 7 and 24. This is going to give me 17 minus 3n equals 7 plus 2n. Next, we are going to go letters on the left. So I look at my letter on the right, positive 2n, and I take the opposite to undo it. 17 minus 5n equals 7. Numbers right, so subtract 17 from both sides. Negative 5n equals negative 10. And divide by the number in front of your variable, which is negative 5. n equals negative 10 divided by negative 5 is positive 2. And that's your final answer. Number 4, these ones are tricky. So number 4 takes on a different order of steps. Your step 1 for number 4 is to cross multiply. Okay, so cross multiplication is something you did in elementary school, just a little bit more simpler. So when you cross multiply here, you are taking the bottom denominator with the opposite numerator. So we have 3 times the quantity, 3x plus 2. Your other denominator, 2, with the opposite numerator. So 2 times 4x minus 8. And you set those equal to each other. Now that we cross multiplied, now we don't have fractions. This problem becomes less intimidating, and we can just take on the steps that we usually do. So now we have parentheses, so we have to distribute. So I'm going to take this 3 and distribute it to the 3x and the 2. So I get 9x plus 6 equals, and I have a 2, so I'm going to distribute that to the 4x and the 8. So I get 8x minus 16. Now, letters left, subtract 8x. So I get 1x plus 6 equals negative 16. Numbers right, subtract 6. 1x equals negative 22. And that is your final answer. Why? Because our x is by itself a coefficient of 1. That's the only coefficient x can have. And it's positive, so that means you're done. So your last answer is x equals negative 22. So the biggest thing here is when you have double fractions on either side of the equal sign, you need to cross multiply. Please complete the practice problems to have an adequate review. Thank you.